Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this Thursday edition of The Sweat. I'm your host, Jesse Cofield. Lots to talk about today. It's a small two-game NBA slate, but all eyes will be on James Harden taking on the Nets. Drama! Colin Sherwood and Julian Edlow will join us to break down all the college basketball conference tournament action. That's going to be exciting. We're going to talk about the latest quarterback carousel action in the NFL, and we've got a large 13-game slate in the NHL. So our hockey panel will give us their DFS strategy for the evening. But we're going to start in the NBA. Say hello to DraftKings contributor Gary and Thorne, along with RotoWire's Nick Whalen. Fellas, like I said, just a two-game slate tonight, but it's got James Harden taking on the Nets for the first time since the blockbuster deal that sent him to Philly. So we won't see Ben Simmons for Brooklyn. He still isn't game ready. But since the game is in Philly, Kyrie Irving will be able to play. So a lot of stats to choose from and a lot of narrative. So Garian, who are you making your captain in this showdown tonight?
Well, I feel like we almost have to specify that we will physically see Ben Simmons because for whatever reason, they're going to have him sit on the bench in Philadelphia and not play in this game.
God.
Which I believe one Philadelphia beat writer described it as being a sitting target, which that sounds super fun for Ben Simmons. So I think this is a great decision on the part of the the Brooklyn Nets front office management team. Look, it's going to be the chalk, and I understand that, but I think I have to lean Harden here. I mean, a motivated James Harden is one of the scariest NBA players that we have in our league, and he's going to be motivated tonight. And he's just been playing motivated since he got to Philadelphia, and we've seen what the results have been. The usage has taken a pretty sizable dip. I mean, he is not generally speaking, a 24% usage guy, but we knew that would happen playing alongside Joel Embiid. But the other areas of his game that have ticked up to such a degree that it really does make up for any loss we've seen in scoring. This is someone who's got a 54% assist rate since he joined the Philadelphia 76ers. He is averaging 21.8 potential assists per game, which doesn't just lead basketball in that span of time. It leads by quite a large margin. So at this point, we're kind of looking at someone who's just a walking double-double. If he's actually motivated to put up a couple more points tonight in his return, well, not a return, but in his first game against his old team, I just think the ceiling is higher for him than it is for any other player on this slate.
Nick, he's going to cost you $18,600 in the captain spot, but do you just have to eat the chalk here?
Yeah, you certainly can. I mean, there's an argument to be made when I was kind of playing around with lineups this morning that, putting Kyrie at captain, who of course is coming off of a 50-point effort against the Hornets earlier this week, that gives you a little bit more flexibility. You're saving, I think, $900 versus going with Harden. And in that build, you can still fit two of Embiid, Kevin Durant, and James Harden in your lineup along with Kyrie at the captain spot. So for me, that's the key is, you want to get at least three of those four because both of these teams are so top heavy. And at least Philly, has Tobias Harris and has Tyrese Maxey, who also contribute. But with Brooklyn, I mean, after KD and Kyrie, on any given night, there's going to be a third guy and kind of a fourth guy who contributes. But finding out who that's going to be is really difficult. Some nights it could be Seth Curry if he's shooting well. Other nights it could be Andre Drummond if he grabs 17 rebounds. But, the rotation at center has kind of been all over the place. So choosing those mid to lower tier options is going to be really tough. I think you have to nail, you have to have the right three stars in your lineup. And, then you're going to have to fill in with one or two scrubs at the end. No Danny Green tonight for Philly, which is not that big of a deal for fantasy purposes. Danny Green has essentially fallen off a cliff over the last couple of years as a fantasy player. But that does open up more minutes for guys like Matisse Thybulle, Isaiah Joe, maybe even Furkan Korkmaz. So those are some guys to consider if you're looking to pair one of those lower cost options with one of your higher cost captains.
All right, well, more drama. Kevin Durant responded to someone on Twitter yesterday who was upset with his performance on Tuesday against the Hornets. He said, "When them parlays don't hit, this is for years of slander from NBA fans. I'm grateful I have this much power now." Okay, so he only put up 14 points while Kyrie Irving put up 50. Apparently, Durant's underwhelming performance lost this man his parlay, and he was upset about it. Nick, Twitter feuding aside, are there any trends that we can point to when betting Durant versus Irving props with Harden now out of the picture? And, which props will you have your eye on tonight?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of trends, I just don't really think there's a whole lot to glean there. I mean, the sample, despite these guys playing together for now almost two full seasons, the sample is still so small. And you kind of have to go through and look at every single individual game and say, okay, who was eligible for this one? Did Harden play? Did he have a hamstring injury for that one? Was Kyrie eligible? Like, we don't have like a very strong sample size of what these guys look like, other than a few just like chosen random games essentially over the last 2 years. So no, I don't think there's some sort of trend that you could follow here. I get what you're saying though. I mean, it does kind of seem like they've traded off great games in the very short term. I mean, KD was amazing against Boston on Sunday. Kyrie was quiet in that game. Kyrie, obviously fantastic against Charlotte. KD was quiet in that game, which led to the tweet. So, if you're just looking at those two games, it's easy to say, oh, they just trade off, who plays well or who scores more. But I think we know that both of these guys are more than capable of going for 30 or even 40 each, on the right night. We've seen Kyrie do it plenty of times with LeBron in big spots. Kevin Durant, probably an even easier player to play with and score alongside. So, no, I don't think there's kind of a one or the other situation tonight. If you look at their individual points props, specifically, Durant is at 28.5 tonight. Kyrie's all the way down at 24.5. So, Durant, I would probably go more on that just because it is KD, but 24.5 to me seems really low for a player who's coming off of 50 points and 9 3-pointers in his last game. So, I mean, if I'm going to make Kyrie my captain in the showdown, I think I got to go over on 24.5 points.
All right, Gary, what do you think? Any trends that you've noticed or just not a big enough sample size?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I kind of tried to figure out what exactly were the trends, if there were any, by kind of pooling together. Okay, how many minutes have these guys played together this season without James Harden on the court? And I had to do it like 3 times because I kept getting such a small sample of minutes. I just couldn't believe it. And then you start thinking about it, and it's like Nick said, it's just not like we have this wide swath of data to pull from with these two guys being healthy at the same time and them not having a third star around when they do happen to both be on the court. In that limited sample, I mean, we're talking about just over 100 minutes, which seems crazy at this point in the season. Durant is the one who has the higher usage rate. I mean, considerably higher, actually. It's like 31% to 24% for Kyrie. Durant averages more DraftKings points per minute. So I think if we're talking about, what we can bet on down the road, I would continue to say that in a vacuum, most nights, I will trust Durant to have the better games than Kyrie. But I think what played out in their last contest against Charlotte is something that is bound to happen from time to time, where Kyrie is clearly feeling it. Why would Durant feel like he has to inject himself in that game? I mean, if someone's shooting 9 for 12 from 3-point range, you kind of just keep giving him the ball. So to speak again about what Nick was talking about, I think that both of these guys have the potential to have huge nights, and specifically they can have huge nights playing next to each other because there really isn't that Tyrese Maxey or, that Tobias Harris as a third wheel right now. You've got a bunch of role players who are basically just catch and shoot guys at their best, or rebound and shoot guys, and someone like Bruce Brown. So I'm looking at like some of the special props for tonight. I mean, for them to both score over 30 points is plus 600. That's very viable. Like, that could definitely happen. For both of these guys to hit at least 4 3-pointers, definitely a little bit more far-fetched, but still within the realm of possibility for two guys who are going to have as high usage rates as these two players are going to have. That's plus 1,600. So I would probably sprinkle a little bit on both those because they can definitely happen with both these guys healthy and playing at their best.
So Philly is favored by 4.5 points tonight. Who do you like to cover the spread, Gary? And the road team has covered the spread in 8 of the Nets' last 9 games.
Yeah, so I would say that like home road splits are important, but maybe not as important as we always make them out to be, except when it comes to the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, obviously, their road splits are definitely more important and tell you more just because of the availability of Kyrie Irving. And they are 5-1-1 ATS their past 7 road games. At this point, with two teams that are still kind of figuring it out, but are obviously among the most talented in the league on paper. I mean, say what you will about the Nets' current situation in the playoff standings. I'm just going to take the points here. I'll take the 4.5. I think this is going to be a relatively close game. I think Philly is probably the better team. They are at home, but I'm going to take the points in what I think should be a pretty close spot.
Nick, what are you doing here?
Yeah, I've been thinking long and hard about this one. My first intuition is Philly. I think the Nets just have nobody to guard Embiid. And if anything, they gave the Nets the player who Embiid loves going up against most in his former teammate, Andre Drummond. So I think Embiid's going to have a huge night. But when you're talking about guys in KD and Kyrie who, like Arian said, not out of the question on this night or any night that they could combine for 60 plus, they're going to keep you in the game. So I don't think this turns into a blowout one way or the other. It's going to be a matter of, how that Ben Simmons vitriol energy ends up being directed. It's like, are the Sixers players going to be in on this? Like, are they going to be coming out all jazzed up, like with Ben Simmons on the bench? Does that lead to them either playing harder or playing more recklessly, where you come out with like too much energy? It's a really hard situation to read because, like Arian said, Simmons is going to be there, but he's not playing. So it's going to be a very strange environment where, the crowd is acting like it would be one of those situations where if he did play, he'd get booed every time he touched the ball, but he's just going to be sitting on the bench. So we really haven't seen, a situation like this as far as what that environment is going to be. But I think chances are Philly ends up feeding off of it. I think they're the much deeper team. They're a team that can withstand, 65 plus points from KD and Kyrie because they have the vastly better third and fourth option. So I'm going to go with Philly here.
All right, one other game tonight, Warriors in Denver to take on the Nuggets. Not as many great storylines to cover in this one, but it should still be a great game. So who are you going to captain in this one, Nick? By far the most expensive option going to be Jokic at $20,400.
Yeah, I mean, you could go with Jokic. It's Denver's fourth game in 5 nights, which you just don't even see anymore in the NBA. And it's because they had that rescheduled game against the Warriors on Monday. And almost any other team in the league would have rested Jokic for at least one of these games. And, of course, he just keeps on trucking. I mean, 38, 18, 7, 2, and 1. Last night had 32, 15, and 3 against Golden State on Monday. I mean, the durability aspect with Jokic continues to be, I think, sneakily his best asset as a player. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of minutes and the amount of workload that he continues to pile up. And all indications are he's going to play in this game. So if you want to go Jokic, obviously that's going to lead to some sacrifices elsewhere on your DK roster. But one build that I was experimenting with this morning that I kind of like is, it's high risk, high reward, but Jordan Poole at captain obviously saves you a ton of money there. And that enables you to then fit Jokic, Curry, and Andrew Wiggins in your lineup. And then the last 2 spots, you could plug in decent role players. You don't have to go all the way to the bottom of the barrel and just hope that Juan Toscano-Anderson gives you 15 points. Like, you could plug in Moses Moody, who's been good lately. You could plug in Nemanja Bjelica, who doesn't have the highest ceiling, but at least has a decent floor. So if you want to go away from Jokic, I would consider looking at Poole.
All right, Gary, and what's your strategy here? I mean, Jokic had 77 fantasy points in his last game.
Yeah, he's been over 75 DraftKings points his last 3 games, which is an insane stat that really at this point only Nikola Jokic could pull off. I mean, it's almost gotten to the point where none of his stats surprise me. So when I do find one that kind of like takes my breath away for a second, it's even more impressive. And that stat that I found this morning was that without Will Barton on the court, and we don't yet know what the status of Barton is going to be for this game, I would assume he's questionable. And if he's not ruled questionable, he's just going to be ruled out for this contest. But without Barton this season, he is averaging 1.92 DraftKings points per minute, because he just has to take on that little bit more of an offensive workload. I mean, it is insane what he is doing right now. So, again, we don't have to spend too much time talking about why Nikola Jokic is viable on any given slate. He's always viable. It doesn't matter what the price point is. But if you do want a cheaper option at captain, as Nick was kind of alluding to, I think one option that I really like, and it's sort of because of Nikola Jokic in a weird way, is Kevon Looney. Golden State just does not have a lot of center depth. They don't have a lot of guys who can, I mean, no one can defend Nikola Jokic, but who can at least stand there and try. And we've seen this matchup 2 times since the trade deadline. And in those 2 games, Kevon Looney is averaging almost 29 minutes per game, which is well above his seasonal averages. And he's also averaging 13 points, 10 rebounds, and 36 DraftKings points in those 2 games, just because he's on the court. Centers, when they are on the court, always pile up fantasy points. So I think Looney's in a pretty nice spot. I think if we find out again that Barton's not playing, that Bones Highland isn't playing, that Monte Morris, who's been in a really nice run his last 3 games, he could also be viable as a captain. But yeah, it goes Jokic and then a bunch of mid-tier plays that could work out. Obviously, Jokic is your safest path here.
All right, real quick on this one, guys, running out of time. Nuggets have won all 3 matchups this season, but the games have been relatively close. So, Gary, and who covers tonight?
This feels like a trap. I hate this line so much. It's begging you to take Denver as a home dog, despite the fact that they are 9-1 in their last 10 games, and Golden State is 3-7 and has a negative net rating over that span of time. I'm going to take Denver because it makes sense. But again, this line is so fishy.
Nick, you feeling fishy here?
Yeah, I feel like we're being victimized by this line, like Arian said. But I'm going to go the other way and take the Warriors. I mean, the 4 games in 5 nights thing, it has to run out at some point. And I think Jokic still has a monster game. The Warriors have just played like such ridiculously uninspiring basketball. But they are the one team where their superstar point guard can have a terrible game and they still end up winning somehow by 15. So, I would love to say I think Curry has a huge bounce back, but he might not even need to. I think Denver is going to be super, super tired. Bones Highland, Will Barton, Jeff Green, all those guys didn't play last night. They're all questionable. Could be kind of a shorthanded crew behind Jokic. So, very weird line for sure, but I'll take the Warriors to cover on the road.
All right, thanks, guys. That'll do it for basketball. Getting into hockey next. Back here on The Sweat, and I'm joined by a dynamic hockey duo, RotoWire's senior hockey writer Paul Bruno and host of the Fantasy on Ice podcast for NHL.com, Pete Jensen. Fellas, this is NHL opening faceoff. So you guys are giving us a DFS preview of tonight's huge 13-game NHL slate. So, Paul, let's start with your team, with your guy, Austin Matthews. He is the hottest player on the planet right now. 6 goals over his last 3 games. And Toronto hosting Arizona tonight, so he likely won't cool off in this one. He is going to cost you $9,400, most expensive player on the slate. So what do we think? Can you even make a case for fading Matthews?
I should say that I'm going to fade him just to watch you and fall off your chairs, but I'm not going to do that to you particularly. So I'm saying, sure, he cost $9,400, but he's the hottest player in the league, and the odds-on favorite to win the Hart Trophy is the MVP, I might add. Sorry that AJ's not here to hear that. But he has also the best matchup among all the big boys on the slate tonight, except maybe for Barkov in Florida, who cost $800 less and faces a Philly club that's easy pickings of late. But he's only got 5 goals in his last 10 starts. So, yeah, I'm on the Matthews train. The guy's got 10 goals, 16 points, 44 shots, outscoring everybody in the world. He's even averaging 19.3 DraftKings points per game all season, which is great.
Yeah, 37.5 fantasy points his last time out. So, Pete, what do you think? Are you going to make a case for fading Matthews?
I'm not, but there's so much value. If you want to offset Matthews' high salary, you could go to some of the worst teams in the league and find immense fantasy value right now. Take the Blackhawks, for instance. Dylan Strome, 4,600 in DraftKings. He's got 3 straight multi-point games. Look at what's going on in the desert, the opposite side of that matchup against the Maple Leafs for the Coyotes with 17 goals in their past 2 games. And what Nick Schmaltz is doing, I know he's technically on the wing, but I mean, you should roster Austin Matthews and complement him with some of these guys either on the Blackhawks or the Senators or the Buffalo Sabres against the grain value against Jack Eichel. So I love some of these other storylines, like I just mentioned, to complement Matthews and spending up for him.
Okay, well, if you take Matthews, you may want to pair him with Mitch Marner on the wing. But $5K cheaper is Kirill Kaprizov of the Wild. He's going to take on a Detroit team that gave up 9 goals to Arizona on Tuesday. So, Pete, would you rather have Marner or Kaprizov tonight?
That's tough. I mean, I like the price point a little better for Kaprizov, but in general, I find myself building a mock lineup for tonight that's balanced, which includes a high-priced player like Matthews, but I'm looking at 2 wings. I'm looking at Alex Tuck, who faces his former team in the Vegas Golden Knights as a member of the Sabres. He's been a little quiet lately, but everybody's going to be flocking to the Eichel storyline, where I feel like Tuck is where you could really get the DFS value. 9 points, 33 shots in 11 home games. Maybe stack them with Tage Thompson if you're in a big contest. I don't think many people will probably be doing that. So, and Tage Thompson, we've seen this year, breaks the slate every couple of games, it seems like. So, yeah, between Alex Tuck and Nick Schmaltz, who I mentioned, has 11 points, 7 plus 4 in his past 2 games. So in the wing position, I'm kind of shifting my focus away from the higher priced guys and going with guys like Tuck and Schmaltz.
Paul, what's your strategy on the wing?
Well, I really like what my partner is saying today. But to answer the question another way, I think Kaprizov gets a great matchup against a Detroit team that's been absolutely getting crushed, averaging 6 goals against in their last 6 games played. And I think that makes a lot of sense over the Marner pick tonight, whether I'm committed to Matthews or not. Kirill the Thrill has 6 goals, 12 points, and 32 shots on goal, averaging 14 plus points per game in DK play. And the Yotes are playing a good brand of hockey that represent a stiffer test against Toronto. So I favor the Minnesota winger. And cheaper than both of these guys, though, is another relatively high-priced winger in Kyle Connor. He profiles similar to the other two fellas, 7 goals and 13 points in his last 10 games. And he gets a Jersey club. That's another of the league's weak sisters in terms of defensive record. He costs $7,500 tonight.
All right, well, we can't keep paying up for everyone, so maybe the strategy will be to save some money on defense. So who's a cheaper option on the blue line that could save you some money, Paul?
Well, I'm looking at a couple of guys that profile similarly in one-sided matchups to choose from. So Josh Morrissey of the Jets is the power play quarterback over there. He costs $4,900 tonight, and they get a nice matchup against New Jersey for a guy who is averaging over 25 minutes a game. He's going to get a ton of offensive starts against that porous team. And for $100 less, you can choose Jared Spurgeon, who fills the same profile for Minnesota as they face that woeful Detroit club. I'll go with him, in fact, because of the wings that have just been brutal lately, as I mentioned earlier.
All right, Pete, you already mentioned that you're looking to save some money on the wing, but you got a defensive option that could save you some cash too?
Yeah, I got 2 guys that I have in my mock lineup. One is a little higher priced, Noah Dobson, $6,000 in DraftKings against the Blue Jackets. He's having a breakout season. He's up to 30 points. He's got 10 goals. He's had 12 points in his past 12 games, and the Blue Jackets are allowing 3.83 goals per game over their past 6. They only have 1 win in that span, so they're kind of falling off here. And then Erik Karlsson, I have my eye on him against the LA Kings. He had 3 assists against them earlier in the year in the matchup, and he is sounds like he could maybe return from injury, the forearm surgery that he had. This guy was playing in rejuvenated hockey, was having a bounce back season. He's tied for 12th among defensemen in points per game this year, and he's joining a Sharks team that has fallen off a cliff without him. So I like the bounce back appeal for San Jose. Maybe not to win the game, but for Carlson to return value at $4,400 if he plays against his rival Kings.
Okay, Pete, so who's your favorite overall value play on this massive slate?
We've been hard on Detroit in this segment so far, but I do like Jacob Vrana and what he brings to them for the rest of the season, because they are a team that even when they lose could score 4, 5, 6, even 7 goals, right? They scored 7 goals when they lost 10-7 to the Maple Leafs that one game. So they packed the offensive punch. Jacob Vrana came back from injury, shoulder surgery, had his season debut the other day, scored a power play goal with 3 shots on goal. He's not playing with Larkin right now, but I feel like over the course of the game, over the course of the season, down the stretch, he's going to be back with Larkin in a matter of time, and then he'll really pop off. This is one of the best even strength goal scorers in the NHL over the past 3 or 4 seasons combined that we're talking about.
Paul, what do you think? Favorite overall value play on this slate?
I look at a couple of guys who are playing second-line center minutes of late. Philip Deneau, cheap but productive option at center. He's found a scoring touch in LA. 7 points in his last 10 games played is just the tip of the iceberg. They're facing a Sharks team that may have a sign outside their arena looking for a goalie because their top 2 guys are sidelined. In fact, I note that our friend AJ's not here, and I have an idea that he might be packing his goalie gear and heading out to that site. I also really like Eric Halla, who has 8 points in his last 10 games. Look at the wingers he gets to play on the second line for Boston. Pasternak and Taylor Hall, two guys that can really light it up. And they got a matchup against a Chicago club that is known to give up some goals as well, particularly as they average over 4 against in their last 7 games.
All right, slate approved pick, please. Paul, who's your must roster player on tonight's slate?
Well, if Matthews and Marner are too expensive for your taste, why not take a look at the third guy on that line, Michael Bunting? For me, he's a must roster as clearly the cheapest player on that unit. The scorching hot offense that they're providing is unequaled around the league. He costs only $5,000. He gets to play his former club tonight, so extra motivation there for a guy who's got 13 points and 26 shots on goal in his last 10 games. The Panthers' Mason Marchment is a guy that I've highlighted regularly in these segments, and he's on the tear with Florida scoring better than a point per game over the past month, and this is still the highest scoring team in the league. So got to look at a guy like him for $5,100 with a mismatch against the visiting Flyers. And cheaper than both of these guys, though, is Adam Henrique of the Devils for only $4,700. He's moved back to center ice, and he gets a matchup against Nashville, playing center the second unit here for the Ducks and riding a personal hot streak with 6 goals and 9 points in his last 10 outings. All three of these guys will bring down your average cost, and they fit the profile that I look for: favorable matchups and streaking scorers.
All right, Pete, what do you think your must roster player on tonight's slate?
It's got to be ride the hot hand, Nick Schmaltz for me, 4,900 in DraftKings, facing the Maple Leafs, who we just caught word of, who will be without Jack Campbell for the next 2 weeks, and their goaltending is in rough shape to begin with. And I was looking at even strength save percentages around the league yesterday, and Peter Mrazek's even strength save percentage, I believe, is sub 900, which is really bad in relative to the rest of the league. So I like the Coyotes to score some goals here. And with what Schmaltz has done over the past 2 games, he's gotten himself up to 37 points in 37 games this season. Crazy stuff, but not surprising because he's playing with Clayton Keller. He's always been productive when he's been healthy. So some hidden value going on right now for the Yotes.
All right, good stuff. You too. Thank you so much. Appreciate the time. As always, The Sweat. We'll be right back. Say hello to DraftKings contributor Julian Edlow and DK Nation's Colin Sherwin. It's best bet time, fellas. We are breaking down your favorite plays on tonight's, or as Julian has informed us, today's conference tournament slate. Exciting
I like
day.
night games and day games, Jesse. That's the fun of it. It's all day, baby.
I know. Julian's going to give us all noon picks.
Try not to sneeze.
Yeah. Can't make any promises. It is an exciting day, though, guys. We got a lot of nationally ranked teams in action. Got Arizona, got Duke, got Nova, Providence, to name a few. So, Jules, which ranked team is your favorite to cover the spread today?
Yes, of course, Duke does play at noon, and I bet them first half against Syracuse because the spot is so perfect. They're coming off the loss to UNC. Syracuse is never going to shoot like they shot yesterday. And they're missing their best player. But because this seems to be a problem, how about a 9:30 p.m. Eastern tip?
Yeah!
Does that give everybody enough time? Stick it in the ACC. UVA won ugly last night. They can just only play in rock fights, and they're going to try and get in a rock fight with UNC, and it's not going to work. I know that UNC is coming off the big win against Duke, maybe a little bit of a letdown spot, but they're just too talented if they're healthy and have their starters out of foul trouble on the floor like we saw against Duke. And UVA is not going to be able to keep up. So UNC, it's on the move a little bit. I bet it this morning at -3.5. I'm good with it up to like 4.5. I think UNC may, over the course of this game, is just going to run away with it against Virginia.
All right, Colin, what do you think? Which ranked team is your favorite to cover the spread today?
So I really like Julian's spot with first half. That was actually one of my picks as well. But since that starts in about 45 seconds, we will roll down the board a little bit here. Villanova -7 against a St. John's team where they can just really control pace against them. St. John's is still that 40 minutes of hell that Mike Anderson's been running since he was an assistant under Nolan Richardson in Arkansas. And what Villanova does better than any team in the country is take the air out of the ball and kill you late with free throws. And that's just sort of how they pull away from teams. I think they shall do it again today. They beat this team already by 11 at home. They beat them by 6 away. We're at a neutral floor. And they're coming off a rested game where St. John's has already played. And that system really is challenging in tournaments. If you're going to win 4 games in a Mike Anderson system in a tournament, that's really tough. I think he got close once at UAB, but otherwise he hasn't had a ton of success in tournaments because of it. So give me Villanova -7. But Duke going from 11 to -15.5 with Buddy Boeheim's suspension. I still kind of like Duke. I don't see how Syracuse is going to score. And if Duke just makes a couple shots, they're going to run away and it's going to be 20+.
All right, well, now let's get weird. So, Colin, which ranked team do you think could be upset today?
I am riding with my beloved TCU Horned Frogs, who have been so good to me this late in the season. It's -5.5. So I think +5.5 is the way to go here. Both teams have lost their last 2 games. They're both not trending in the right direction, but one's looked a heck of a lot better and doing it, and one's been covering a lot more. TCU needs this game more. They need this to lock themselves into the tournament. I think they're there already. This would just be more about seed and to make sure that the bid thieves don't come up and snatch them. This is the 3rd time these teams have played this year, but Texas only won by home by 9 in their last matchup. And since then, TCU's been playing much better basketball. So I'm going to ride with the Horned Frogs +5.5.
Okay. Julian, what do you think? Which ranked team do you think could be upset today?
I think Colin's in the right conference. I just hope that he has the wrong team because I do have a little sprinkle on Texas +650 to win that tournament. I'm looking big. I'll just circle 2 here, the ones that everybody has, Kansas and Baylor, by far the 2 best teams in that conference. I just don't think they have much to play for at this point. Maybe Kansas is kind of playing for a 1 seed. Baylor could potentially lose today to Oklahoma and still get a 1 seed, depending on how things fall. I just think they're 2 kind of dinged up teams a little bit that don't care much about winning the Big 12. I think it's going to be a Texas or a Texas Tech that comes out of that conference. So, give me the 2 big dogs, Baylor or Kansas. One of them's going down today.
Okay, now let's go outside the ranked team. So, Jules, what other team do you like to cover the spread?
Yeah, I'll go to a couple of pick'em games, kind of late afternoon, early evening. UNLV is at home here, going against a Wyoming team that it just beat. Wyoming much better at home than it is on the road, and this game's essentially a home game for UNLV. I like them there, and then Oregon is just way too overrated. They got a tournament win because they beat a 3-win Oregon State team, but now you give them pretty much a pick'em against a Colorado team that we just saw has the ceiling to beat somebody like an Arizona. I think that Oregon is just continuing to be overvalued. I think Colorado is going to win this game.
All right, Colin, what other team outside the ranked teams do you like to cover the spread?
First of all, I really like Julian's. I like Colorado first half a lot today. I think that Oregon team just has to fire too many shells and they don't have a lot of depth. Seton Hall +4 against UConn. 4 is just too many here. I think UConn can win, but I think this is a spot where it's going to be a 1-possession game late. Both teams are playing well, but this is a clear look ahead spot last night for Seton Hall. Don't worry about that game against Georgetown. That was just, they're focused on this one. They need this to get into the tournament. This is kind of bubbly, so I really like Seton Hall +4 here. I think they can come up and snag one.
All right, how about which upset outside the ranked teams are you going to pick today, Colin?
So we got a bubblicious game in Tampa between Texas A&M and the Florida Gators. This Florida team just does not know who they are, what they want to be. They look great for long stretches of like 15 minutes of basketball, and then they just regress to whatever they are all year. Texas A&M is a little more consistent. They're playing a little bit better basketball. A&M beat UF a month ago at home. They've won 4 in a row. One of those wins was at Alabama. A&M's just playing better basketball right now. Give me the Aggies and points plus 2.5. It's going to be a little bit of a home game. It's going to be a lot of Florida fans in the stands. I don't think that matters.
All right,
Aggies plus
Jules,
2.5.
where are you going?
That's the one I had. I put out my article for today. Hey, look at the timestamp. I was up late working, as I always was, 1 a.m., put my college basketball best bets article out because I had to, because they were all noon games. And this one's at noon. Florida and A&M. I got A&M plus 2. It moved to plus 2.5. I don't care. Take the money line if you want. If you want a different answer, too many points. Boise's getting too many points. Nevada plus 6.5. I haven't bet that yet, but I kind of like Nevada plus 6.5 against Boise.
All right, it's now Slate Approved Pick time. Julian, what is your absolute favorite bet on today's college basketball slate?
It's noon, and I don't care. We already talked about Duke and Syracuse. DraftKings Sportsbook is putting up the best price out there on Duke to win the ACC tournament. It's minus 135. It was minus 120. It moved to minus 125. I bet it each time. I'm betting it again. I don't care. You get Syracuse today without its best player. Then you get the winner of Miami and BC. Duke's going to roll out of bed, wake up on Saturday, and it's in the ACC championship game going against a UNC, Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, whoever. Hedge then if you want. I won't be. Duke's winning the ACC easily.
All right, Colin, absolute favorite bet on today's college basketball slate.
I agree there's value on Duke. I just worry about Miami. Miami has just been known to step up and snip teams in this tournament, especially under Jim Larranaga. I think they could find a way to get it done. So I'm just a little trepidatious there, but on the numbers, absolutely, Julian's right. A&M's my favorite bet today. I really think that this Gator team is just going to go home in a heap and end their NCAA chances right in a building where they should win. Mike White probably gets fired. I mean, I think the full meltdown hits today. Sorry, Gators. It's not going to be a good one.
All right, thank you guys. Good stuff. And don't forget to tune in this Sunday to the Ultimate Bracket Reveal Show. Line Drop the Bracket. It starts at 6 p.m. on Selection Sunday. We're going to reveal all the lines for the first round of the NCAA tournament as the selections unfold. I'm going to be your host along with our DK analysts, members of Dan Le Batard and Friends, and experts at VSiN as we bring you the ultimate bracket betting experience. So make sure you tune in to VSiN or any of our social media channels from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern on Sunday as we attempt to make sense of the madness. It's going to be fun. And so is the final segment of today's show. Football is next. Final block of the show, everybody. I'm joined by DraftKings contributors Jeff Ulrich, Pierce Dietrich, and Reed Fowler. Guys, with the quarterback carousel in full swing, we decided now is a great time to analyze first snap markets on the DK Sportsbook for 2022. So put simply, what quarterback will be under center for the following teams to start the season? And there was more movement yesterday as Carson Wentz has reportedly been traded from the Colts to the Commanders. Indy will get a couple third-round picks over the next 2 years in exchange, and it'll be the third team in 3 years for Wentz. So, Jeff, do you think Wentz will be better in Washington than he was in Indianapolis? Also, fun fact, if Wentz starts week 1, he'll become the first quarterback since 1950, when the records were first tracked, to start on opening weekend for 3 different teams in 3 years before turning 30.
That's an amazing stat, and it kind of speaks to the fact that maybe Carson Wentz is just really good at burning bridges. From a performance standpoint, I think that you may see a little bit of an uptick from Carson Wentz from a fantasy perspective. Washington is not Indianapolis, and they don't have Jonathan Taylor. They have a good offensive line, but they're not as good as running the ball as Indianapolis, and I think that will probably show through in Carson Wentz's passing volume this year. I think he hit a lot last year behind Jonathan Taylor, and when it really came down to crunch time, he didn't really do anything too impressive from a metric standpoint. And I think he's going to be forced into doing more for the Washington Commanders next year because they're going to need him to do that. And I don't really think it's going to work out that well, quite frankly. So what we've seen from Carson Wentz is that he's injury prone. He doesn't have the greatest accuracy. And he's not really a good leader. So, no, I don't really see this working out too well. You may get a little bit more fantasy juice from him because he's going to be throwing the ball more, in my opinion. But even in that perspective, Carson Wentz's best days likely behind him here. I definitely don't like this move from a real-life perspective with the leadership issues and with the contract they're taking on. So, not very bullish here for the Washington Commanders. I think they would have been better served just going with a cheaper backup option for at least one more year.
Pierce, do you think Wentz will be better in Washington? Injury-prone player, like Jeff said, and this field has definitely doled out some injuries.
No, this is terrible. This is just absolutely terrible. Washington would have been better suited to keep Heineke and keep the draft picks, or go sign Trubisky and keep the draft picks. Now you've got Wentz and his terrible contract. And the Colts had an above-average line last season, and still Wentz was hit the second most of any quarterback. When he played for a bad offensive line in Philadelphia, 12 games in 2020, got sacked 50 times. Washington does not have really a good offensive line. I would say it's a below-average offensive line, and he'll get injured or he'll perform poorly. They were better suited to have a quarterback that could scramble and move around in Heineke, have a quarterback like Trubisky that can move around. Wentz can't move. We've seen that the last 2 seasons. He's not as mobile as he once was, and he's just under assault constantly. Terrible move.
Yeah, Reed, the Washington Commanders' odds movement after the Wentz trade. So to win the Super Bowl, they were plus 5,000. Then they're plus 4,000. To win the NFC, plus 2,500. Then plus 2,000. To win the NFC East, plus 500 to plus 400. So, like, a little bit of a bump there.
Yeah, because even though these guys are bashing on Wentz, which is true, it's valid, he's better than Heineke. I get that we saw Heineke, and we always go back to Heineke can run, and he played some really good games, so we forget about all the bad games that Heineke also played, with the Washington Commanders last year and the years previous, right? Like that's the thing, that he is an upgrade at quarterback from Heineke. From an entire landscape, no, I agree with these guys. It's a bad play. It's a bad call by the Commanders to bring on Wentz and then to trade away draft picks to get him. Like, he's still – people are still trying to relive Carson Wentz a few years ago before he got that ACL injury late in the season when he was having an MVP-type season. But after that, the guy's decision-making is one of the worst in the league. If you take a look at his first 7 games with Indy, he was playing extremely conservative football. He was a good quarterback because he wasn't asked to do a lot. When he was asked to do a lot, he had like the 7th worst turnover-worthy plays in the NFL. That's Carson Wentz. So bad move on a landscape, but an upgrade of the quarterback position.
All right, guys, so no lines available yet for who the next quarterback of the Colts will be, but that doesn't mean we can't speculate here. So who do you think Indy should target as their next quarterback, Pierce? Should we trade for Jimmy G here?
They've got nothing to trade. They're going to have to go to the free agent market. So Trubisky, Bridgewater, maybe they can, pull Winston away from the Saints, but they don't have the personnel to make a move. I mean, they could trade somebody, but that's going to make them worse. And they don't have the draft picks to move. Their best pick is 42nd. So if they target a quarterback in the draft, I just don't see a quarterback dropping at this point. We've seen the value of these quarterbacks. We saw what someone got from Wentz. We saw what Russell Wilson brought in. So if the value of quarterback is going up and each day the supply of quarterbacks going lower, these quarterbacks in the draft are going to get up into the top 10, if not the top 5. And if for some reason a quarterback falls to the second round, that's a huge red flag. That is a bad quarterback. And that guy's probably not going to start snap 1 of next season.
Reed, what do you think? Also, something to note, the Colts' odds to win the Super Bowl went from plus 2,500 to plus 3,000. AFC plus 1,400 to plus 1,600. In the AFC South, their odds didn't change. It was plus 140, plus 140.
Yeah, addition by subtraction. But yeah, look, I mean, we talked about it, Jeff and I, with Emerson yesterday, talked about some of the wild card moves that the Colts could make. Jimmy G is obviously out there. Kirk Cousins is a name that's been thrown around. He's got 1 year left on his contract in Minnesota. I doubt that they deal him. Jordan Love, which I'm sure Jeff's going to talk about in a little bit, but I'll mention Derek Carr, right? Because if you're the Raiders, I know Josh McDaniels has said that's his quarterback, but there is an outside chance. There's an outside chance that McDaniels looks at the draft this year and says, nah, looks at the draft potential in the next couple of years, and if he can acquire some draft picks from Indy, which, you know, I don't know. Well, they've acquired some. They could do that because right now your quarterbacks still available are Jimmy G, right? Who else? Marcus Mariota, Gardner Minshew. I'm sure Jeff's going to mention Nick Foles and Mitch Trubisky. Those are your quarterbacks that are available, if not grabbing someone away like Derek Carr. So that's an outside shot, but I think Jimmy G is probably the most likely scenario.
Jeff, Jordan Love was reportedly a hot target of the Colts back in 2020 when they didn't have a first-round pick.
There he is.
He was. He's definitely connected a little bit to the Colts, and I think that is an option. I mean, Indianapolis is in a weird spot here. They have the money to spend, but it's like going into a store and everything's out. Like, you know, we got supply chain issues here at the quarterback position, just like we do in the rest of the world right now. So, and Peter's right. Like, they don't have a top draft pick. I think what they need to do, and I think what you may see Indianapolis do, is pull an LA Rams and legitimately just go, okay, we've got the team. We've got a good team. We've got a good head coach we like. We think we're close. Let's trade everything we have. I don't care if it's 4 year, whatever the max is you can go. I can't remember. But I think you may see the Colts try and do something like that. And they may go after Matt Ryan in that situation. Now, it's going to be harder to do. I mean, the Falcons, you'd have to give up a pretty nice package because they're not exactly saving a ton of money if they do trade Matt Ryan because of the dead cap hit and all that stuff. But if you offer them an attractive enough package, it could work. You know, Reed joked about Nick Foles, but like Nick Foles over Jimmy G, I mean, like it's probably going to cost them less at the very least. He's a type of quarterback like Nick Foles is definitely in play for the Colts next year. I do think that they'll probably try and be more aggressive and go after like a Jordan Love if they can't get a Matt Ryan deal done. So there's a lot of different options for the Colts. It really just depends on what their organizational psyche is right now. Are they ready to go all in and pull in LA Rams? Or are they just going to try and maybe get a young quarterback like Jordan Love and develop them? That's not a bad scenario either, but lots of options. The Colts are a team to watch right now. They could go in so many different directions.
Jeff, that Philly team has, I mean, those quarterbacks in that quarterback room have been on like 17 different teams in the last 3 years, right? Nick Foles has been on like, what, 4 teams in the last 3 years? Like, to your point though, Jeff, yes, that does make a lot of sense. He's much cheaper than Carson Wentz, right? And they've both been traveling all over the place.
Super Bowl winner.
Yeah, I joke about Nick Foles, but it's probably the cheapest option.
All right, guys. Well, lines are up for the Seahawks' next man under center. So after trading Russell Wilson, the favorite is someone they haven't drafted yet. Any rookie quarterback is minus 150. But like Seattle is never afraid to take on some drama. So maybe Deshaun Watson could be in the mix at plus 700. Reed, when you're looking at this, like, who do you like?
Yeah, Pete Carroll has mentioned that he really loves Kirk Cousins. But what you have to know about Pete Carroll is that never believe what he says, ever. Because at the Combine, you said there's relatively no chance that we're trading away Russell Wilson. What happened a couple of days later? Wilson was gone, and probably one of the biggest blockbuster deals that we've had in a long time. So, look, Drew Lock or Jacob Eason, they're not the future. And Carroll is old, right? He's an older coach. He's in the 70s. He's probably not going to want to start all over again, even though he's got energy of a 50-year-old or a 40, whatever. He's just very energetic. I don't think he's going to want to do a full rebuild. So that leads me to believe that one of these veteran quarterbacks, like Jeff was alluding to with the Colts, is going to happen with Seattle. The problem with Seattle is they don't have a team like the Colts do. Bobby Wagner was released. They're all Pro Bowl linebacker. It looks like they're resetting. So someone like a Marcus Mariota, someone like a Kirk Cousins is going to be tied to them. The rookie quarterbacks, that's fine, but I don't think there's value there if you're betting in the outright market. And like Deshaun Watson, there's a lot. I think he's going to a grand jury on Friday, and things are going to transpire before the free agent market starts up next week. So, right, that's going to be something to keep an eye on. But I think it's more of those veterans, not Deshaun Watson, probably someone like a Mariota or even Kirk Cousins.
Jeff, do you agree that even though any rookie quarterback is the favorite here at minus 150, you think it's actually going to be like a veteran guy?
Yeah, I would fade this line. I mean, I would fade the rookie quarterback line. I mean, look, I definitely think Seattle will invest in some kind of rookie quarterback in the draft. But let's not forget, way back when, who did Pete Carroll bring in right before Russell Wilson? He spent a ton of money to bring in Matt Flynn. So, I don't think Pete Carroll, and look, the only reason Russell Wilson started over him because Russell Wilson was so good in preseason that he forced Pete Carroll's hands. I don't think there's a Russell Wilson in this draft who's going to do that. So the logical scenario is Carroll again goes out and overspends on a veteran quarterback. And I think Marcus Mariota is definitely at the top of one of the top names that you should be targeting for the Seahawks. And then he probably brings in a rookie quarterback to try and develop. And if the rookie surprises, great, maybe he'll run with them. But the most likely scenario is a guy who's an established veteran like Mariota, who's fine. I mean, look, Mariota isn't Matt Flynn. He's much better than that. But that's the most likely scenario for the Seahawks this year. Like Rita mentioned, they just released Bobby Wagner. This isn't a team who likely isn't going to try and reset so quickly that they're going to try and go all in on Deshaun Watson. Yes, Pete Carroll is a type of coach who would take on that kind of drama, but I don't think that's the route they'll go. I think Carroll will try and win this year with defense and jamming Chris Carson in for 2 yards a carry. It's not going to work, but that'll likely lead to a more budget-friendly quarterback like Marcus Mariota.
Pierce, who do you like to be the Seahawks' next man under center?
It's a reset. It's a rebuild. They've mentioned trying to trade Tyler Lockett. So why go out and get a free agent? Why burn a draft pick, even though, second round is their earliest pick? So whoever you get in the draft is not going to be an elite quarterback that you're going to want to build your franchise around. So you just get somebody as a place setter to hold the table down for a little while, and that's going to be Geno Smith at plus 500. If you want a veteran, then just take Geno. He's familiar with the offense. He knows what he's doing. He has a rapport with his teammates. I mean, this is a throwaway season is what it's looking like. I mean, if they're considering trading Tyler Lockett too, then they're kind of punting on the season. And they should. Look at the division. Do you think they have a chance? They don't have a chance. So use your draft picks to fill the other needs. Don't go out and overspend for a veteran that's not going to really do anything. Geno Smith at plus 500 is the obvious answer.
I mean, they definitely don't have a chance if Geno Smith is starting. So,
and where does DK Metcalf?
Oh, look, some hockey.
Oh, look, hockey. Just kidding. No, we're talking about the New Orleans Saints. Guys, the favorite to start under center is Jameis Winston plus 275, then Taysom Hill at plus 350. So who would you put your money on, Jeff?
Yeah, the Saints may have the most boring kind of quarterback situation to watch because it just feels like a situation where they're just kind of hamstrung. They're hamstrung by their salary cap. They're hamstrung by the quarterback market now. Russell Wilson maybe had a little bit of linkage towards them, but it's gone now. And who else are they going to trade? But not trading for Matt Ryan. There's no way Atlanta's doing that. So this is a team who's they've got a couple quarterbacks who are kind of just better than a lot of what's out there anyways. And Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill, not better, but the same, right? I shouldn't say better. Better is completely wrong. But the same as a lot of the options that are already out there. And these are players who already know the organization. And look, Jameis Winston had some success. I mean, I don't think that the Saints' early success last year was necessarily all Jameis Winston's doing, or a lot of it wasn't. But I think there's a good chance he ends up back with the Saints. I would land Taysom Hill there, though. I just don't like targeting players coming off knee injuries, especially ones who, didn't really establish themselves as number ones anyways, and wasn't the clear-cut winner over Taysom Hill, kind of just won by default there. So I would land with Taysom Hill between these two, but I do think it will be one of Winston or Hill under center for the Saints week 1.
All right, Jeff is going with Taysom Hill. Pierce, who are you going with?
I would like to go with Winston. I think he wants to play there, and the Saints want him to play there. But with this market being the way that it is, and the Colts not having the personnel or the draft picks, but having the money, they might be able to steal him away and overpay for Winston. I normally wouldn't think he should get a big contract, but given the market the way that it is, people are going to overpay for him. As Jeff mentioned, he's been fine. Maybe holding a clipboard for 2 years has led to some improvements. He'll rebound from the ACL injury. We've seen other quarterbacks do that as well. Maybe that's going to make him more of a pocket passer, which could be good. He's a better fit in New Orleans. If Thomas comes back healthy and they've got Kamara, that's a decent team, and he could really revitalize his career. But I worry that he might chase the money with a big-time contract somewhere else.
Reed, which one you going with?
Yeah, a name that's probably not been thrown out, but has a solid chance, Teddy Bridgewater. He's got some experience there, and the experiment in Carolina is not going exactly well. And Mike Thomas is going to be back. right? And we know when Drew Brees was hurt and Teddy Bridgewater filled in, that was a good duo, right? That was a comfortable duo, and there's experience there. If it's not Jameis, Pierce made a really good point that if Jameis is in a quote unquote good position, right, with his situation, because what's the contract going to look like for the Saints? Like Winston's not going to want a 1-year deal, and they're probably not going to want to give him a multi-year deal. So he's probably not going to necessarily just go there for a little bit of money. So what about a little Teddy Bridgewater?
All right, good stuff, guys. That is the show. Thank you for watching. Make sure to tune into Madden at noon and the slate at 5 p.m., and we'll see you tomorrow at 11 a.m.